welcome to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust meeting of Thursday, May 9th, 2024. It's 9 a.m. and we're in Memorial Hall and Town Hall. The meeting will be recorded and broadcast by Westborough TV, thank you, and will be available for viewing. I'm calling the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approved minutes of our meetings of, first of all, March 14th. I had a couple of minor changes that I saw before we make a motion. Alan, if we look at page 3 of 3 of the March minutes, it's on the last page.
Yep.
And in Article 41,
Yep.
the end of the first line, it says, I'm not sure if this is right now, Mr. Bain suggested responding to the amend the motion article.
The word "the" should not be there.
Right.
Okay.
All right, and then farther down, it's a small change where it says in the second to bottom line, small change is small, but I think it just should be the change is small. Strike
Yeah.
this first
Okay.
small.
Yep.
And then at the very bottom, where it talks about Senator Moore in the second to last line of the 45 High Street, it's not Senatore.
That is true. How that got past the spell checker, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. Any other changes or adjustments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for acceptance
As amended.
as amended. Anybody
Well, I said so moved, but I saw also Stephen raised his hand.
Steve, all right,
or,
so
you put whoever you
Kate-
want.
Kate
And I
and
was like, I
Steve.
don't want to take away his motion.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Second.
All right. Given we have a
I'll
motion
second
and a
it.
second?
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor, show of hands. All right.
6-0, 6-B.
6 with 6 being present. Okay, moving on to the meeting minutes of the of Thursday, April 11th. I have one minor correction. I think it's just one. Once you get that up, Alan.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, it's at the 902 3 Baylor Avenue.
Yep.
The trustees will arrange in second sentence
A photo
a
opportunity.
photo opportunity instead of
Okay.
just vote. All right, I didn't have anything else. Anyone else have changes or amendments? All right, seeing none, take a motion to approve minutes of April 11th.
So moved.
Okay, Sarah moved.
I'll second.
All right, Kate second, and all those in favor? Okay, 6-0, 6 being present. Okay, so we got minutes done. Okay, Sheila is here. One of the things we need to do is, first of all, we need to sign the acceptance of the deed of 45 High Street. So the select board has approved that transfer, and we have a quit claim. And Sheila, if you can come up.
Oh, we need a motion?
We need a motion. We need
I'll
a.
make the motion if you
You
want.
make the motion?
So I move to accept from the town of Westborough the quitclaim deed executed by and through the select board on April 23rd, 2024, pursuant to the vote taken under Article 21 of the March 23rd, 2024 annual town meeting, and further to authorize the chair or the chair's designee to complete, with assistance of counsel, the necessary filings with the Registry of Deeds.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Second, okay, good. All right, why don't we give this to you, and if you could come, up, maybe just walk around and let people sign, if you could do that. While we're doing that, can we move on, or do we want to wait?
Wait.
Huh?
The clerk needs to be here
Oh, for the,
for both of these, because it gets notarized.
okay, all right. It's got to be notarized, well, Sheila can notarize, do we need,
Sheila. You're going to notarize? Yeah. Okay, okay, excellent,
Yeah,
thank you. Oh,
yeah.
then we're good, then we're
Okay,
good,
that's what I
fine.
thought. Yeah, she's notary. So, question is can we move on with those
What was
motions?
that? Who seconded?
Yeah, if we get organized there, let me put this
Sarah
here.
No.
These.
No, second.
Oh, Steve said.
Yeah, I think Sarah made the motion.
Are you gonna have any, Mark, any slides or?
Just,
Okay, if you want to get set up, I mean,
your address.
Okay.
Okay, so less than one is more.
But still.
okay.
Still, you're right. Yeah. Print, sign, and put your address in. I need my pen for your signature. I have a pen. No.
I don't have a real pen.
Oh, I do.
Today is the,
Okay, that's it. Appreciate that.
there you go, your ceremonial pen? Yeah.
Print, sign, put your address in.
For anybody watching, we have basically just, because we do need to have it notarized and a majority plus one of the trustees present to accept the properties at 40, or the property at 45 High Street Extension, which was voted upon at the recent annual town meeting. So I apologize for the,
We need the document signing music?
yes. Dun, 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 dun.
We were
You
gonna do that, signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, we forgot last time, and then we
Well-
said we're gonna do it this time, and then, oh.
Okay.
Well, I remember a motion being made that you were going to be responsible for that, Kate. It was one of the times you weren't away.
In the agenda?
Yeah. No, it was in further correspondence. Okay, so we're done with that one.
Thank you,
We
Sheila.
want to move on to the declaration of trust. As we know, we did, or the home rule petition that we had sent in order to combine the Housing Partnership Committee or merge it into the Housing Trust was signed by the governor last week or earlier this week. And as a result, we need to do an amendment to our trust to reflect that request and that ruling. So we have some more.
Okay, very fine, okay, let's,
So we need a motion to modify the trust.
Let me make
Alan,
the motion,
you do-
okay. So I move to execute the certificate of amendment for the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust Declaration of Trust as recorded with the Worcester South Registry of Deeds on March 22nd, 2021, book number 646759, page 54, and per Article 9 of the Declaration of Trust, to add Article 4, Section 8, Paragraph 21 as follows: as authorized by the Select Board to serve as the appointing authority for the Housing Partnership Committee for the town, where the trust may appoint the Housing Partnership Committee either, 1, as a committee of the whole of the trust, or 2, as a subcommittee comprised of trustees and/or residents with at least one trustee as a member, and further authorize the chair or chair's designee to work with council to file the certificate of amendment and other documents as required with the Registry of Deeds.
Okay, second.
Second.
Second by Steve. Okay, any questions on that? This is basically just so that we can then incorporate the housing partnership, if you will, within the trust structure. So,
Very broadly,
yeah.
does this impose significant additional duties? What does this mean for us? Are we going to have additional items on the agenda and so forth?
Well, not much more than we have today. Basically, their housing partnership has been defunct for a number of years. And as a result, other towns have done this where, just very quickly, the trust is focused on, if you will, developing the, affordable housing within Westborough.
Right.
Okay? The partnership basically was to work with developers to assist them through the process of like state grants, permitting, et cetera. So they sort of worked with outside developers, we were internal. So what we've seen is, since the housing partnership had been defunct, we recognize that since we have the expertise and have in a way been sort of taking on that function in some ways, working with developers in town, as opposed to building something ourselves, we thought it'd be more effective and efficient to combine the two, as have other, I don't know how many other towns.
Most with trusts have done it.
Most
And
trusts.
The other thing is, Housing Partnership Committee is authorized to run lotteries when they have certified people, to do monitoring. Those are also powers of the trust, so there's redundancy there. So this eliminates that redundancy, and then also gives us the incremental role of assisting developers with the affordable component of their project. Which we've been doing
essentially
informally.
anyways,
Right,
yes.
we've been doing
anyways,
that
right.
as,
Formalizes our-
consulting with,
Our current role,
such as the
yes.
Westborough Shopping Center work, and, there are a few other items that we'll get to on our agenda that would fall under that category.
Great, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
That does, thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask for a acceptance of that motion by show of hands. In favor, 6-0, 6 being present. And do we want to then,
Yeah, we have to start signing, and Sela gets to,
these two, this will come under the same, okay. So we're going to have, we're going to be passing around, Sela. I think we need, okay, so here's
both
the.
copies signed.
Both copies need to be signed, the certificate of amendment, as well as the housing trust with the amendment.
Did we sign both copies of the deed? 2 copies of the quitclaim deed, or just one?
There was just one copy of the deed.
There was just one
Okay, that's
copy.
fine, that's fine.
We will make copies.
appreciate
and then
everyone's
send that
patience.
off to Sharon, or I'll scan it and send it off to Sharon. Okay, we're close to being on time.
We all got the memo and brought our trusty pens.
Yes.
Point of order, you're not playing your signing music, just so you know.
We're not playing.
Shut down pretty quickly, so. Thank you, Sela. But
I
these
missed
two.
that.
She said we're not playing the signing music. Well, the question is it signed, sealed, delivered, or is it the Jeopardy theme?
Well, I mean, you could play the Jeopardy theme as we're signing, and then sign, sealed, delivered
Once
as
it's over, right?
delivering it. I mean, I can go all out DJ here if you need to.
That's okay, Kate.
Strike that from
I
the
know, I'm
minutes.
shot down again, I know.
Strike that from the minutes.
Gotta make some fun here, people.
I know, it's gotta be fun. If it's not fun, it's not
The
the
minutes are
town
just gonna say,
government, right?
"Keep shut down again."
Minutes, please reflect that. Yes, I would like to see those point of order reflected in the minutes.
That Kate is the funmeister.
Yeah, sure.
All right, you're the funmeister.
Thank you.
We can probably do that while we just finish signing here, I think.
So start the agenda item and
Okay, so, yeah, Alan, if you wanted, you just requested that, you might want to
Sure, so
mention a few things on this,
Yeah,
on
so
these changes.
the next item on the agenda is going to be discussions related to the project at 18 and 30 Lyman Street, also known as Westborough Shopping Center. The development team and the project team are here and will be speaking momentarily. There was a discussion about this at the last meeting of the trust with respect to consideration of subsidy for incremental affordable housing units as part of the project. And there were some items brought up in the discussion that were questions. I did some research, so I've got some related information. The way the project is currently moving forward with permitting, there was an action before the Zoning Board of Appeals who approved a zoning variance, I believe it was related to open space, with a stipulation that 25% of units be SHI certified rental units, proportional to the scope of the project. There were questions about 55-plus restrictions and the Executive Office of Housing and Living Communities, EOHLC, with respect to age restriction, particularly since that was a huge issue with the Pulte project. So for clarification, the EOHLC ruling on age restriction states that units restricted to 55-plus cannot also be restricted by age in any other way. And so the issue with the Pulte project is the Pulte was zoned and permitted at 55-plus and no under 18-year-old residents. And it was the under 18 that was struck down. The options for EOHLC would be it's either 55-plus without further restrictions or 62-plus. You can then restrict under the age of 18. Neither of those would work for Pulte or the town, hence the negotiation and the financial settlement for the variance that allows them, effectively to not have the affordable units that would be non-compliant in exchange for the $9 million. And so that was the nature of it. So having affordable units restricted 55-plus is fine, so long as there's no other age restriction. If these incremental units were to be 55-plus restricted, there was discussion of using some of the funds the trust received from the settlement with Westborough Retirement, which is the Highlands on East Main Street. That settlement was $950,000. The Highlands settlement does not specifically require any age restrictions on replacement units, but it is a preference of the select board that negotiated the settlement, as we lost 55-plus and 62-plus restricted units there. So the conversation would be that we're effectively asking that of the 25% of the SHI units in this project, 5% of the total project be 55-plus. So those incremental 6 units be 55-plus. We would see that as replacement for what we lost at the Highlands and would provide subsidies in exchange for that restriction there. The planning director did some research with HLC as well and got guidance that whether or not the project is built under special permit or comprehensive permit, at 25% SHI, we get credit for 100% of units on the inventory. Okay. I did ask her to confirm it. She's like, yes, it's true. It's not just comprehensive permit. I'm hesitant, right, because it's a ruling from EOHLC, and those sometimes can change. But that is our working understanding at this point in time. And so hopefully that answers some of the discussion questions that came up among the trust from last week and provides some guidance. And I think at this point, we want to hear about the project.
Yes, we do. Okay. So anyhow, we're invite up the Westborough Shopping Center project. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the trust. For the record, my name is Mark Donahue. I'm an attorney with Fletcher Tilton, and I have the privilege of representing Colangelo, Massachusetts Real Estate Trust with regard to the addition of 132 residential units to the plaza that they have owned for more than 44 years, known as the Westborough Plaza. We had the opportunity to make a brief presentation to the selectmen back in April. That is a condensed one from what we provided to the planning board. And so in the interest of time, what we'd like to do is kind of give you that same presentation, and then we can talk specifically about affordable housing desires of the trust. With me is Brittany Gessner of VHB. They are the civil engineers of record for the project, and she'll walk through the site design.
Thanks, Mark.
move the mics down a little bit.
Sure. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. Brittany Gessner, civil engineer with VHB. I know some of you mentioned you've already seen this presentation, but we'll do it again. Let's see. There we go. So I believe most of you are familiar with the site. The site is located at the corner of Route 9 and Lyman Street, and it is located in the Highway Business Zoning District, which does allow multifamily housing as a special permit from the Planning Board. Under existing conditions, the site includes 36 acres of land, more than 400,000 square feet of commercial space, including retail and office space, and there are nearly 2,000 parking spaces on the site today. Under existing conditions, there is no residential on the site currently. What we are proposing is a small redevelopment of approximately 4.5 acres at the southern portion of the site. You can see, it's a little hard to see on the slides, but right here where Staples and I think it was Home Goods that was
Home
right
Goods,
here.
yeah.
Yep. Home Goods is now gone and Staples is still there. What we're proposing is to remove those buildings in their entirety and put back a 4-story building with underground parking. So put back underground parking, first floor retail, so still be first floor retail, and then 3 stories of residential above that. You can also see we are proposing an outdoor courtyard that will sit above the retail, so right at that second floor, which will create a nice private amenity space for the residents. We intend that only the residents will be able to use the underground parking. We are proposing 1 parking space per unit in this 4-story building will go underground. We are also proposing, there is an existing 2-story building at the southwest corner of the site. Today, that second story is office. So we're proposing to maintain that building and just renovate that second floor office space into residential units. And then we're also proposing a full renovation and improvement of the surface parking lot behind this southern strip portion of the site. Today it's entirely impervious. There's no landscaping. There's lots of potholes. It really could use some cleaning up. So we're proposing to add a significant amount of landscaping. We're adding almost a half an acre of pervious area back here. Improved stormwater, improved curbing. And we intend that this parking behind the buildings really will be used only by the residents, and that anyone using the retail space will continue to park in front of the retail shopping center as people do today. As Mr. Donahue mentioned, we are proposing 132 new residential units between the 2 different buildings. And as I mentioned, we are proposing to add open space and impervious area to the site compared to what exists today. We do expect that most of the residents will be using one of the southerly curb cuts off of Lyman Street to get into this back parking lot area. And for the most part, a lot of the residential traffic will be pretty separate from the retail traffic. However, both residential buildings will have front doors on the north in the retail area, so that new prospective tenants can park in the front and know where to go to the leasing office. So this is just a zoomed in version of that portion of the site, just so you can see a little bit more clearly what we're proposing. It is also worth noting that the future B-Walt trail is proposed to go right through the center of the site, which could be a really great amenity for these residents. This is a rendering of what we expect the new 4-story building to look like from the front, from the front commercial parking space. So you can see here, this entrance in the center would go to the lobby for the residential units, and then on either side, the left and the right, would be the front door for either one of the two retail spaces that would be on the first floor. This is also a rendering, but just pulled back a little bit. You can see the existing subway. All of the remaining commercial spaces we do expect to remain open and operational all the way through construction while this is going on. This is the back of the site. So this would be the garage door that would allow residents to get to the underground parking. And then there will be 2 loading dock areas that will service the retail spaces in the back of the site. This is a rendering of what that 2nd-story private courtyard will look like for the residents. And that concludes what we have for presentations. I'm more than happy to answer any questions as they relate to civil engineering, but I expect you'll be more interested in the affordability of the units.
Right. Thank you so much. I do want to just remind people for our questions, discussions, obviously, you can ask anything you want, but this has been and is being vetted out by the planning board, and ZBA isn't involved, are they? No?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so, but, the planning board obviously has, vetted out traffic, flow, access, other concerns, particularly with, schools and sizes. You may want to, if I can just add, the plan is for those 132 units, 25% will be studios, 50% will be 1-bedrooms, and 25% will be 2-bedrooms. Is that correct?
In rough numbers, there are 36 studios, 62 1-bedrooms, and 34 2-bedrooms.
Okay, so roughly, in those ranges. So just for people to understand that this is not a, I don't want to push people in one way or the other, but it's not units that are particularly large. I mean, they may have a nice footprint, but they're not, multi-bedrooms except for those 2 bedrooms. And so, some of the concerns that have been raised is about, schools, and that's been, addressed, given the smaller size, hopefully the impact, if any, on school-age population would be minimized, especially given that it's not a green space by any means. There is a little bit there, but it's not, playground area. You would have to go over to the commons or something like that.
As shown by Ms. Gesmer, the site is not designed with recreational facilities, but for the future of the B-Wall Trail. It is obviously built, incorporated directly into the active retail. It is anticipated that will be attractive to a certain clientele who will benefit from that and from the superior access that the site has to Route 9 and therefore 495.
Right. Okay, so given that, I don't want to, I would prefer people didn't redo like the planning board. I mean, they've sort of vetted all this, so our job is more, Optimally, what we would love to see is by law, by zoning, 20% is already committed in proportion to those three layout sizes to be affordable. But we would like to get it up to 25 because that.
25 is committed, because that's the zoning requirement with the ZBA variance.
Oh,
So, so the question is, for us, with respect to subsidy.
go ahead.
With us with regards to subsidy, the question would be, two questions around it. One, any thoughts you have about residential preferences for the affordable component for, typically, you can give preference to affordable units for rental units the first time when they're new construction, but subsequent renewals then fall into the general, marketing and lottery system. So one question is, are you open to pursuing, an agreement with HLC that would allow some extended residential preference for the units? And if so, the trust would obviously discuss. I would suspect we would support you in that effort and provide assistance where we can. And then the second question is for the 6 incremental units from the 20% by core zoning to the 25% through ZBA, would you consider allowing those to be restricted 55 plus? Our senior needs assessment, which was a townwide assessment, showed that there's a significant shortage of affordable units for 55 plus, as people in town who are empty nesters or looking to downsize don't have options to do so in that marketplace.
So as it sounds like the trust is aware, the ability to impose a level of preference on residents is subject to approval from the Housing and Living Communities. We're committed to seek that in some fashion, to be able to do that. The Colangelo family lives in town, obviously works in town, and wants to be able to support the town through that type of effort. To add on top of that, an age restriction is a wrinkle that has not been seriously considered, or has not been considered at all. And it would add a fair amount of complexity to the development. And we would think that the goal of the 55 limit restriction could be met by, which is particularly to provide an opportunity for people to stay in town and be able to downsize, would be met by a local preference system without an age restriction.
Okay.
I have a question that's unrelated to those two questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. The rendering is beautiful. I wasn't aware of the 2 separate building component of it, and so I was just curious if the folks in the second building, that's going to just be the renovation on the top, will have access to that beautiful courtyard, or if their entrance kind of only allows them entrance to that aspect.
The courtyard is more for the primary building.
Okay.
The buildings are not physically connected in any fashion.
Okay.
And, it would be anticipated that simply for security purposes, the entrance into the building would be restricted in some fashion.
So I just want to make sure that the affordable units wouldn't all be located in one location, like in that separate building, and that they would be equitably distributed amongst both buildings then?
It will be.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So with respect to the 55 plus consideration, would you be willing just to continue conversations about it and see feasibility? Part of it is, with those restrictions, it could open up some additional financing through mass housing, with some of the programs there as well. I realize it adds complexity. And sort of if we're considering subsidies to help mitigate the cost of having, 25% affordable housing in the project, we're looking to, leverage and sort of attain some of the goals that we have as a trust with respect to, the community needs as well.
Sure.
We're not asking for commitment at this point. It's more of
I think your question started with whether we're willing to continue to have a dialogue, and the
Yeah.
answer to that's yes.
Okay.
Okay. It does lend some complexities. It lends some legal complexities as to the ability to bifurcate within a development. Most developments under the statute, which allows age restriction, which is otherwise prohibited by the Fair Housing Act, talks in terms of totality in some fashion. There may be a way to be able to work that. We're willing to look at it. It has to be balanced against a concern, a logical concern of a developer that you don't want to have a unit that can't be rented because you
Well,
can't find anybody
absolutely.
who qualifies. And as I'm sure you're aware, one of the tricks, if that's the right term, of age restricting and income restricting units in some fashion is also trying to find people that qualify and desire to live there. And vacancy is the bane of particularly a developer who's gone and made that kind of investment. But we can continue to have a discussion about it and see if we can figure out some ways around it.
Yeah, I think, looking at, just personally, I know I've talked to a number of people who are looking to, I'll use the word either downsize, resize, whatever, that are seniors, so definitely 55 plus, looking for places, because there are few that are affordable in Westborough that are age restricted.
But
Location.
I'm sure you appreciate that
And-
affordable has a number of different definitions to it. And when you start talking about over 55 affordability and you look at asset classes and the
Yes.
like, it lends a complexity that where a potential tenant doesn't feel something is affordable, they don't necessarily qualify within the guidelines.
Right.
And it's a finer line to run
Yeah.
than when you end up with what is generally people who are younger,
Yeah.
who have not accumulated an asset class in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
It's particularly difficult, candidly, in a community like Westborough, where a lot of the goal is downsizing, and therefore you end up with a high level of liquidity when they sell the primary residence they're in.
Right.
But that's not to say it can't be done. It's just trying to recognize that, we have to be able to
Yeah,
rent the units.
the reason that I mention this is one of the things I do is, as a volunteer in the spring during tax seasons, I prepare taxes as part of a program under AARP called Tax Aid. So I did 90 returns this past tax season, and a lot of the people, obviously, we see assets in the sense of their IRAs and things like that. And most of these people do not own homes. They're in rental units currently, or maybe they're in a house that they rent, or, different situations. There are quite a few that, I think would pass the affordable test in many cases. But anyhow, that's
And those would
something
benefit,
that-
and those would benefit from the local preference. 'Cause the local
Correct.
preference would deal with
Absolutely.
residency.
And if there's a local preference option, that would, I think, be very desirable. Yeah,
And I-
personally, because people
Right.
like to stay in town. They want to, one of the things we found from our senior survey that we did and the subsequent report was that people want to, as we say, age in community, not necessarily in their home, but they want to stay, obviously, in the community. Their friends are here, their church is here, they know the library, they know the amenities, et cetera. So I think there is a good portion of the population out, or a decent portion of the population out there. But for further discussion. And we are, I don't know how much the housing production plan is going to address that in particular, but I would hope I hope it would, which we're right in the process of. with this fine company called VHB, along with the planning department that we're hope to have next month or by July sometime.
So,
I know we need to wrap up, right?
Yeah, we do need to wrap up.
But I have another question, but do you want to say something?
yeah, I was gonna say, so stepping back, our goal is to meet the needs of the community and understand the complexity of the 55-plus age restriction, particularly on partial, and even whether or not HLC would say yes or maybe, or, you're joking, right? Who knows what the response would be. If those goals can be met through, a broader or stronger or longer-term residential preference, then I think that would, my sense of the room is that would be acceptable, that the goal is to, provide the downsizing opportunity for seniors, as well as affordable opportunities for young professionals and others who want to live in this community. And so if we can, do a little bit, they ask us for a little bit of exploration. If it's not feasible, if it's, not viable, obviously, we would want to force or do it there.
Yeah.
So,
And
I
I've
think-
got something, but I think Kate had something
Go ahead.
first.
I've already asked a question, you can ask it.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, it sounds like, these are things that we are hoping to discuss, right? Is 55-plus practical? Could there be some sort of option where if there's not someone readily available, it then could be open to other tenants? Is that an option? Or would the local preference take care of it? And I also think Alan alluded to this, if there's additional sort of cost involved in the complexity, maybe there'd be grant options that we could help fund to support what we're asking for. So in my mind, again, as Alan was saying, it seems like these are discussion points. And at the end of the day, the goal is to meet the needs of the community. And wherever in this mix that lands, I think we will end up getting behind it.
Well, I think the important focus is the discussion is going from 20% to 25%. And that has an impact, obviously, on the return for the developer. And the trust's willingness and ability to assist the developer to get to that point. How we determine those units are then used is something that, we can't decide independently. We'd solve that problem pretty easy. And we can figure out what it all means in some fashion and be comfortable with it. The Colangelo family is committed to try to get to 25% in some fashion, and do that. And I know that your trust has been discussing in some fashion the opportunity to provide subsidies to the developer to assist in that and move forward. So
Actually, we have a possible motion if we want to try to wrap up.
yeah.
Can I
Well,
just
she has a
You have
question, and I have
another
one other item to talk about.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I just want to clarify, these are rental units, correct?
They are.
Not owner occupied, okay. So I'm wondering too, because I understand that the vacancy aspect of things, the worry of vacancy is always a big, a question for developers. And when you add age restrictions on top of it, there's, more likelihood of vacancy and all of those kinds of things. So I'm just wondering if there would be something that we could entertain as a trust, something that the developer would be interested in, thinking about master leasing. And so the idea of the trust, we haven't talked about this as a trust at all, but like the trust taking on a lease in times of vacancy to hold the unit. And so that it didn't, so in the so that it could be held for people that met the qualifications that we were hoping for. So,
if you want a pre-lease, we're glad to take a deal. If that's the question.
Reaches into his
Now-
pocket and pulls
Now
out
we
a
can talk about
contract.
something.
Page in the order?
Yeah.
Okay, that's something we definitely should explore, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
thank you.
I have experience with master leasing with other tenants, and so it's something that I can talk to and speak to from a different perspective, and maybe at a different meeting. But it's just something that I wanted to just kind of convey that we understand and appreciate the fact that like vacancy is a problem for developers and for landlords. And so what can we do as a trust to support occupancy being as high as possible, I think is something that we also are very interested in. So,
Yeah, and just to clarify, I don't think that there's a concern on our side of vacancies as to the 25%.
Okay.
That there is an adequate pool in the Commonwealth right now.
Yep.
That
Yeah.
would be able to meet the qualifications and want to live in these units.
Yeah.
In some fashion. The age adds another piece to it. But getting from the 20 to the 25 does have an impact, and that's kind of what we're looking for some assistance on.
And
There's,
Alan,
there's
you
a
had
second, there's a second component. Is the project's going to be at least at 20% AMI? That actually opens up a potential financing opportunity through Mass Housing's workforce housing initiative. It's a fairly new initiative.
Yeah,
And
we're-
what we're seeing in other communities is trusts offering subsidies for units that, for the duration of the financing, which could be at 0%, a subsidy that can offset effectively the financing, right? So, but this would mean, for the period of the financing, restricting
Yeah.
some units at 120%. This is not an ask to do this.
No,
It's
and-
more of
and it's
just-
been explored.
It's
The
been
difficulty for this project with regard to the workforce housing program that Mass Housing has is it requires a single asset, sole purpose entity. And this is part of a 400,000 square foot retail component in some fashion. And it also requires that the recipient of that, I refer to it as a soft second, mortgage financing, because it's not a grant, you have to pay it back sooner or
Right.
later, in some fashion, has to be a limited dividend organization, which you might recognize that term from
Yep, yep.
40B language, which basically puts a cap on what the return can be of the owner and the investors. That, you, as a general rule, under 40B regulations, you can't have mixed developments because of that, because you can't segregate the dollars in some fashion. So there's some complexities there that try to get there. We can talk, I think, a discussion with Mass Housing might help to understand whether we can get through those hurdles in some fashion, or just figure this isn't the right project for us, so.
No, yeah, and that's really the ask, is a
Yeah.
quick, not an exhaustive effort, but a quick effort
Yeah,
to see.
sure.
The thought was that, if hypothetically it was 20 units, that's potentially $2 million at 0% for as long as 40 years.
Yep.
A relatively small subsidy per unit from the trust invested would pay off that loan in the 40 years. It's a way to
Sure.
increase workforce housing. It adds complexity, because then you're also taking on a marketing responsibility and income and asset validation at 120% AMI. But it was a way to potentially lower the overall cost of the project and the financing as well.
Sure.
And
Take a look
so, and it's knowing that's a new program and there aren't a lot of, projects under it that I can find to see what's worked and what hasn't worked. Just a quick exploration, because I think that's something we might, consider as well as part of our mission. It's not just affordable housing, but moderate income housing as well.
Given our time frame, we do need to move forward to keep on agenda. We did have a proposed motion that gives us that ability to continue discussions
Yeah,
and
to
continue
formally.
negotiations, et cetera. And
So-
Alan, if you want to
Who would,
enter that,
who would want to be part of that negotiating team?
I'm willing. You and I have been,
Doing it, do you want to
Unless
join us because of
Kate-
the master leasing?
Sure.
Okay. So I would move to appoint Mr. Bain, Ms. Storm, and Mr. Edinburgh to negotiate a subsidy and related criteria and conditions for an affordable housing subsidy related to the 6 incremental affordable housing units.
okay?
So Steve seconded?
Okay. So this just basically allows us to, as a sort of a working group, if you will, because it's not a quorum, means we don't need to, it can be more, I'll say informal, but still focus on what the needs are. So any questions on that motion? Any concerns? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, or I need a second? Second, yeah, okay. All those in favor of the motion, show of hands. Okay, good.
Great.
Thank you so much for
Working with
coming
the,
in, and Mark
Board of Working
and
Group.
Brittany.
We'll organize through Ms. Jingus a meeting.
Yeah, probably Jenny should,
Yeah, she
Be-
should sit in.
she should be sitting
She's
in
ava-
on
if she's
that,
available, but
as she is available, but yeah.
I
I'm
think
just
given-
wondering, coordinating a meeting. I mean,
Yeah. yeah.
Somebody's
Yeah,
got to take the
ne-
lead on
ne-
that, or it
next
never
step.
happens.
Yeah,
So
we'll
she'll do
work
it.
with Jenny, we'll reach out, we'll coordinate a
Great.
meeting, and, you know, having a sense of where you are in the permitting process, and I'm sure financing and all the other complexities of a project like this, we'll look to move quickly,
Yes,
as quickly as possible,
great.
so.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Look forward to hearing
And
from
just
you.
also want to thank the Colangelos for being here today and for all
Thank
you
you
do
so
for our
much.
great town.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Homeborough DPA discussion. So Alan and Kate. You've been
It's all
busy.
Alan.
So Alan,
So,
come on, Kate.
Just as a quick update for the public, you know, we're looking at a down payment assistance program to help Westborough residents and town employees move in to units. Here within Westborough, we worked with Metro West Collaborative Development, who gave us a rough scope of work of what it would take to administer a program. We developed our program guide using templates and best practices from 4 or 5 other similar programs around the Commonwealth. As their estimate of what it would take to administer the program for a year was slightly over the $10,000 bidding threshold. We don't need a formal RFP process, but we do have to at least solicit bids. We sent out bid requests to 4 organizations who do this kind of work. 2 provided responses, so we've met the bid request and response requirement. In comparing the bids, Metro West Collaborative Development was significantly less expensive, less than half the cost of the other bidder. And the other bidder also was expecting some additional potential costs related to translations that were included in the Metro West Collaborative scope of work. And a reminder that Metro West Collaborative Development administered very successfully our COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Program, which is very similar in structure to the administration of a program like this. So the proposed action at this point would be to award the bid to Metro West Collaborative Development and notify them of such. Their bid came in at $11,250 per hour, which would handle 4 to 6 cases a year. Over the year, if there were additional cases, that would be done.
I don't think it's per hour, the 11,250.
The 11,250 is for the year.
For the year, right. You
Right.
said per hour.
Right, sorry, per year, sorry. $11,250 for the year, per year. If there were additional cases, there's a low hourly rate for the additional time of their staff to manage those cases. The recommendation is that we allocate $12,000 now through June 30th of 2026 to fund the contract, and that we also authorize the project team to prepare and negotiate a contract for signature at our next meeting. Doing that, we should be able to actually launch the program July 1st, with the start of the fiscal year. Any questions on this? And in the packet, you have the proposal from the 2 bidders as well as the bid document that went out. And that'll be attached to the minutes of this meeting for public viewing.
Questions on that? We do have some proposed motions, but let's just talk about any concerns about awarding and proceeding with Metro West Collaborative for this project.
No, but I was wondering what happens if we end up with more than 6? Do we just allocate additional funds, or is there an automatic process for that? Because I understand there was quite a bit of demand for rental assistance in the past.
So this is down payment assistance
Down
for
payment.
Oh, this is
homes,
down
so we're
payment,
not
yes,
sure
okay.
of the demand.
Yes, I'm tracking.
If we see a large number of applicants,
Mm-hmm.
we would have to make a decision, this is very much a pilot year, whether to
Right.
extend funding or to limit it.
Okay,
to
yes. But
to-
this would,
to
this would
the-
cover the initial handful, and then we could revisit if we
Right.
see a massive
Up to
demand.
6.
Yes.
And this will also give us a track record so that, as we head through the year, we can look
Mm-hmm.
at grant funding and other, community development block grants and other potential sources of funding to make this sustainable.
Yeah, we have no idea how this is gonna go.
Right.
So,
I mean,
Yeah.
there's some communities, hit their allocated funds within, 6-7 months.
Mm-hmm,
Other communities roll over the funds because less than half got used
Yeah.
in a year. In one community actually switched their program, instead of doing potentially many small grants, they do one grant of of $200,000 a
Right.
year.
Yeah, and my sense is there aren't a ton of houses that, in sort of the middle, middle income level are even available for sale in Westborough. So I guess it's hard to know exactly.
Right, you're looking at, you are looking at homes near
Right.
or below the average home price, which would be, but that could be starter homes in the extended downtown
there
area, it
aren't
could be
many,
condominiums
yes.
Condos.
and things of that nature. So it is sort of finding,
Right.
finding the mix.
And I think
Yeah.
doing this
have to
pilot.
start
as
somewhere.
Alan- Yeah,
Yes.
as Alan says, will give us a sense of, is that the right number?
The right
Does it need to be
amount,
More,
yes,
you know,
yes.
are we swamped so that maybe it could be less per applicant, et cetera? But basically, at this point, we're just asking if we want to proceed with this project or program for the coming year. That's all we're really looking to commit to at this point, through June 2025. If we want to proceed, we have some
I'll make
motions so that we
motions.
can proceed with drafting and getting the contract completed.
So I move to award Metro West Collaborative Development the bid for administration of the Homeborough Down Payment Assistance Program through June 30th, 2025, or as may be renewed or extended by mutual agreement and as allowed by Massachusetts general law.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. We have 6-0, with
Okay.
6 being present.
Excellent. I move to allocate $12,000 to fund the Homeborough Down Payment Assistance Program Administration contract through June 30th, 2025.
Okay, discussion on that. We basically are allocating money. We won't, actually appropriate it until we reach contract, but we will encumber that money if this motion passes. Second?
Second?
Second on Sarah. Any other discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor? All right, 6-0.
Thank you.
6-0.
And
Six
finally-
being present.
Finally, move to authorize the chair, Ms. Storm, Mr. Edinburgh, with advice of counsel to prepare and negotiate a contract to be presented for review and signature by the trustees.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, great.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. So,
I will
moving
let
on,
let them know.
let them know, if you can, Mr. Secretary.
Will do.
Moving on, there's a quick, if you just want to
Yeah, so,
mention the TD.
yep, so.
Sent out an email. But
Yeah, so I sent out an email and it's noted in the packet. The trust had applied for a grant of $175,000 to the TD Bank Charitable Foundation's Homes for Everyone grant program to run an emergency rental assistance program on a pilot basis for up to 18 months. We did not, that was a competitive grant. I included the email in the packet. We did not receive the grant. No further information as to why, or what we could have done better or differently, or how they were prioritizing their funding. We'll get a sense of that when the awards are published, later this month, to see. That said, that's disappointment. That's very disappointing. There's still a need, and actually over the last week, 2 pieces of information have been become very available. For those not aware, Forbes Research did an analysis and found that Worcester County is the 3rd most difficult rental market in the U.S. as far as stock, demand, availability, pricing, which was a bit of a surprise.
That we're
doesn't
that
mean-
high.
It doesn't mean it's the most expensive. In real dollars,
Just
but
not inventory.
it's inventory, and it's most expensive for the economy, right? So like you expect rentals in Manhattan to be more. The housing shortage there is pushing up prices, but not on a percentage basis as high as they're being pushed up in our area. And then Mass Housing Partnership updated their housing stability monitor, which is they're looking at evictions and foreclosures. And over the 6 months ending in February 2024, Westborough has seen 29.4 evictions per 1,000 renter households, which is very far above the state average of 16.37, and represents 77 eviction filings in a 6-month period. And so there's an eviction problem in Westborough. And so I'm wondering if, and hoping if the trust would consider funding the rental assistance program ourselves as a pilot, for a year, not the full 18 months, and we can pick the amount to do that with, and then continue to work to find other sources of funding that could either reimburse or extend the program or continue it in a more sustainable way. To do so, we would need to solicit bids and select a program administrator. We can check to see if we can do that as an extension of our existing rental assistance, the prior
SARA.
rental, the SARA
Re-update
contract,
that.
or whether we'd have to go out to bid again. But it would be similar form instruction, and then we would need to allocate funds for the program. So the first question is, it's something we want to do? We've allocated $17,500 towards administration of a program. If we don't go forward, that allocation would just be null because we wouldn't be using it.
That was for the TD. We
that was-
wanted to put some
That was the
skin
matching
in the
funds
game.
for them. I think the estimate that, and based on the SARA program, we're probably looking in the $20,000 range to manage the program for the year. The SARA program ended up, running about 12%, a little over between 12 and 15% of the grant amount, the amount of funds we were providing in assistance, which is pretty typical and very close, pretty much best practice for these types of programs. And so
12% of
the 17,000, if we were to do a $125,000 program, the 17,500 might be sufficient already to cover the administration cost for the year. So,
Okay, I don't want to go first. I always, when we
So
go around
thoughts?
the table this way with questions or comments on that approach, we've given that TD.
Oh, go ahead. I was
Okay,
gonna say,
go
my initial response, I'm a bit torn on this. I was talking to Julia O'Neill Welsh. Is that-
O'Neill
yes.
Welsh.
She was saying that she's literally had to send people to go sleep in a church because they had nowhere to sleep. And that's a terrible place to be in for a community that's as, supportive and frankly privileged as ours is, right? On the other hand, anything more than maybe a couple of months of support in my mind helps to bolster a market that's not really supported. Like, I wouldn't want a lot of our money to go to bolstering rents that are too high for the market to truly bear. If we've got evictions at that high, maybe there needs to be a market adjustment in the rents. And if, I wouldn't want too much to go to this. Like, I wouldn't want us to be taking on a big chunk of people's rent for a long period of time. But there's a balance in there, right? So I think the initial, as we originally discussed it, there'd be a temporary, 2-3 months, or a few months of support. And then it could be extended in sort of unusual circumstances with the goal of helping people get to a more permanent situation, right? Yeah.
I included the grant application
Right, I recall that.
in the packet.
Some aspect of
where,
that, yes.
We were looking at multiple forms of support. One
Right.
is that emergency rental assistance that gives people time to get into the state level programs, which are much higher dollar and much longer term,
Right,
and can go beyond rent to include utility assistance and things of that
Right.
nature. And then it also provided the potential for some rent increase mitigation, right, which is lower dollars in grant per household, and it's more about assessing, if someone's, if someone's landlord is pushing the rent up,
25% or
25%,
something
and
unbearable, yes.
and the family can afford 15%, but not 25%, can we provide a subsidy for that 10%?
For a time, yes.
For a period of time, until the situation stabilizes. I mean, I'm not sure with a high level of evictions, you're going to see rents go down.
You should, but the market doesn't always seem to work efficiently,
It doesn't, I don't think it works efficiently because I think these evictions, all of these landlords had the opportunity to say, okay, I'll lower the rent to a point you can afford. And they've chosen not to. And that's because they believe, and given what we know about the market and the demand versus the supply, they will likely, if this still,
They'll
for the
get some
foreseeable
poor
future,
sucker to take any price.
they will find someone who will be able to afford it. And, relative equipment apartments aren't staying on the market that long. And so, yep, you don't want landlords, raising the rent and then telling their tenants to come to us.
That's
to
it,
help
for the
pay
long
for it,
term, for the next
right?
year, 2 year, we'd have to
Yeah.
think about that, right?
But this,
Because
I would say this would be a 1-year pilot project.
Right,
To see who needs, what types of assistance people need, who needs it,
right,
what are the circumstances, and then we can evaluate how we might modify or limit or adjust the program or expand the program, as well as pursue sustainable sources or other sources of funding.
Yeah, I was gonna say my initial feelings are.
What I'd like to do is sort of,
Oh, yeah.
what I've done is, something like this is sort of we'll go around the table, I'll go last, but, yeah,
Being a good listener.
You're being a good listener.
But pull the mic when you say that, so the public can.
or whatever.
I agree with what Sarah has been discussing.
Okay. Kate?
So I'm 100% for this as a pilot project because I think that the need is clear. And so we can help families and individuals, at least in the short term. But I agree with you that this isn't a long-term solution. And what is the root cause here? And so there's probably a lot of causes. But I'm really curious about the trends in this, in the eviction. What are are there certain landlords that are more prone to evict than others? Are there certain types of landlords that are more prone to evict than others? Like in terms of small triple deckers, or is this the big major landlords? Is it eviction for lack of payment, for behavior, I'm just really curious about all of those things. And so I'm drawn to kind of gather landlords and to gather information, to sit in housing court, to watch this all unfold and kind of figure out what is the problem here. Like, why can't we come to some sort of solution together to help families?
Right.
And yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Okay, I totally hear what you're saying. Are these landlords, are there options for them that we're not hearing about? Who are, like, if they evict somebody, it seems like they don't seem too worried about who's going to fill the void. Where is the money coming from? Where are the people coming from? What's happening in our community to Westborough people, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, they're unable to meet their needs to live in this town. So what is really happening with the landlords? You know, I think we really need to find out where are these options coming from? Because they're not going a month without rent somehow. So who's behind, you know, what is really behind this?
Yeah.
I'm just building on what you're
Yeah.
asking.
And evictions are not quick or cheap.
Correct. Yeah, that's why I'm just like,
In Massachusetts as well.
Right.
And so, and oftentimes, like, what we learned with the SIRA program is that landlords are often unaware, right? That, before you start eviction proceedings,
So many
as a
steps.
landlord, if you have a tenant who's not paying, the landlord can go to the state and initiate the RAFT program, which pays the landlords, I think right now it's up to $10,000 for back and future rent directly. The landlord can actually apply for the program and simply all the landlord has to do is get the tenant to agree that they want to do that. And part of that program is the landlord then is prohibited from eviction for a period of time as well, right? So sometimes landlords aren't aware that there are ways to help their tenants stay that gets the landlord whole or very close to whole. You know, I mean, I guess we could reach out to MHP and ask, because they actually pulled all of the eviction records from housing court for the town.
Yeah.
We could do that as well, but if they've pulled them, if we could, you know, see if they can identify, you know, is there a pattern among,
Yeah.
you know, given that most of our rental units in town are large developments.
Yeah.
The question is this a large development problem, or is this?
Right, is this some
or
central
is this-
decision-making
is this
authority
the
far off
the
somewhere?
4-unit or
Yeah.
the 8-unit downtown?
yeah, can we invite those landlords to this room and say,
Talk
we
to us."
understand that eviction is an issue.
Right.
We don't want people to end up homeless. And I know that you want to continue to have rent. So what is how can we work together on this? And so I just, you know, in terms of the motion on the table, I don't know if there is a motion on the
There is
table.
no
Okay.
motion right now.
But I would make a motion to allocate the funds that we were originally intending for the TD Bank Charitable Trust Fund grant, and then fund it ourselves with our own money to have a pilot year for rental assistance in this emergency situation that we're in, and at the same time explore options for long-term sustainability or long-term change here, because we want this to go in the opposite direction for evictions. We don't want Worcester County to be listed as the third worst rental market in the U.S. So I think we need to be a part of that situation and solution.
Steve?
Yeah, so I was going to say, my initial thought was, I'm all for this. I think it's obviously a need the community needs. And to me, this is sort of why we exist, right, is to help people. Sometimes people just need that 6 months to get back on their feet. And if we can do that, I'm all for it. I also wonder if by us self-funding it and setting it all up, if that could help us in future grants, because now we have a program that works as opposed to an idea that might work. So from that standpoint, I think it's great too, because we could say, look, we've helped X number of people, this is what it costs, this is how much money we need, and I'm all for looking for other sources of more of a quote-unquote permanent funding, but I couldn't be more supportive of the idea of us self-funding it.
My concern would be, and it's sort of been expressed a bit, as far as better understanding the problem. I think that's got to be part of this initiative, so that we understand, is this, where it's a high eviction rate, well, it's not just maybe people causing problems or something like that, like eviction for cause. And how much is for lack of paying rent or paying full rent or something like that. And maybe working with MHP, we can get a little bit more data. Because one thing I wouldn't want to do is, if somebody's not paying rent, but they're just trying to, get an apartment for some period of time for free, and then they'll get another apartment after that. I wouldn't want to subsidize those kind of folks. I'm not saying that
Yeah, I
is
mean,
any kind of reasonable amount, but I think with the Sarah program, obviously we were under COVID, and that was the driving force, because we know people were hurting. In this case, there's very low unemployment, economy is good. What is the cause of this? Is it
Rents are too
just
high.
so high?
Rents are too high.
If
That is the
rents-
cause.
Right.
Right.
If
and there's this, right,
yeah, so, let me just finish. So, I agree with that, relatively, but I'm just concerned to make sure that we are helping those that really need the help. And are worthy, if that's the right word, of the help. So, I support this. We're not talking a ton of money, but we're talking to give people, a bit of help. I think that also as part of this, we need to, once again, the sooner we can get the data, the better. Then if we find it's like 3 major landlords that account for 80% of the evictions, sit down with them and say, okay, are you familiar with these other programs? If people are struggling with their rent, you keep them in there, you get your rent, and you don't have to go through the eviction process, which is costly for you, even though you're going to be able to rent it again. Because you probably, by the time you get through that, they're going to stop paying, or, and you're going to lose multiple months of rent, not just 1 month, when, you evict
Yeah,
and
it
then
can
have
take a
to
year, it can take a long time, yeah.
Right.
So landlords want to
And-
avoid that, of
so-
course, yeah.
and I had had a conversation with someone I know who's a landlord in another community, small buildings, right, who said that he had tenants who weren't able to pay the rent. He therefore was going to miss mortgage payments. And the bank said, we'll give you forbearance if you start eviction proceedings. It was the bank saying, if you evict and you get new people in, we'll just take these payments and throw them on the end of the term,
Yeah.
right? Where the
As long as
bank,
you- yeah.
their lender didn't want the uncertainty of other
Yeah.
subsidy programs. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
a
it's not like it's
complicated.
hard-hearted landlords necessarily,
Yeah,
it's, yeah.
and so I think,
Complicated.
when we looked at the SARA program, we had concerns about fraud, right? And people misusing it or using COVID as cover, right? And what we found out is, one, the application process filtered very well. We helped, 17 households. One, mid-COVID moved, so their support from our program ended. The 16 other households, we prevented 16 evictions and enabled them to get
Yeah.
into the state programs and other programs
Right.
and stabilize, and get themselves set up for better housing security long-term. It's, my sense is that as a pilot program, our grant from proposal to TD Bank Charitable Foundation was for $175,000. That was over an 18-month period. So I guess I would suggest we start the program at maybe 100,000 or 125,000, sort of like, you know, two-thirds of that, if you would, so, or, you know, maybe, so two-thirds would be closer to 125,000 or 120,000. Hold on to the 17,500 allocation, because that should cover, or could cover the administrative costs. We might need some of the other for that. And, you know, run it as a pilot for up to a year. And then, yes, in parallel, create a working group. And I think really that comes with, that can be even under the label, the Housing Partnership Committee role that we have.
Yeah.
To reach out, pursue, see what additional data we can get from MHP, so we don't have to do all that legwork ourselves. And then, you know, outreach to landlords, even just, you know, we did an education program, we sent an email, we sent a letter.
We sent letters to all, you know, we went down the list of everybody
From
who
the assessor's
had
office.
some
Rental
number
units.
of units, like, I don't know if we went, I think we even went down to just, you know, like multifamily 4 units, which, you know, are categories identified from the assessor's office,
It's,
all the way up to the, you know, multi-hundred units, and let them know of these programs, you know, and that was, with COVID, we could draft another letter saying, you know, we have noticed, and obviously, you know, cite the Forbes report and others, saying, you know, we have a very high, you know, eviction rate here in Worcester County, and we want to make sure, or Westborough, it would be helpful if we get the specific Westborough numbers, so that, which is what we have, I believe. They
Yeah,
said
what we
29,
have.
or
we're at,
29.4
yeah, we're at 29.4 evictions per thousand,
per thousand.
so, which is,
Per thousand.
which is more than 50%
renter
higher than the
households.
state
Yeah,
average.
it's high.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
very high.
It's very high. So the absolute number would probably be maybe 40 or so. I don't
It's
know.
over a 6-month period, it was 77 evictions.
77, okay. Yeah.
A lot.
All right, so anyhow, there's a proposed motion in the packet. If someone would like to make a motion, and Alan, maybe what was the amount?
So I'll do the second motion. First, move to allocate $125,000 to fund a rental assistance program. I'll modify what's here as a pilot for up to 1 year, ending June 30th, 2025, in addition to the $17,500 previously allocated for program administration services.
So it's a 1 year, or June 25?
I would like to second that motion.
Yep. Okay. Okay, I'd like to wait for Ken to come back before we vote.
Yeah, well, and this should help us collect data on where things currently stand for our community, right? The people who are applying, the people who need it, that'll give us additional data points about what the causes are, or the pressures, or massive increases in rents, or which, you know, if there is a landlord or two who kind of stands out, maybe some of that data will come through as well.
Okay.
Yeah. While we're waiting, I think I just want to address the concern for fraud. And while I'm not naive to think that fraud doesn't happen, I also think that it is an overblown idea that it is happening for more with people who are people in poverty or people who are in the lower income scale.
Right.
And I think that fraud happens at every level of
Yeah.
income, and it happens. And also there's a reason why it happens. And so I just want to say, I think that everyone is worthy of help at some point in their life. And so I think that this program can support people who are currently struggling.
Yep.
And if they are trying to take advantage of us to do that, like, so be it, because somebody else is going to benefit from it, okay? So if one person out of 20 families, I don't care. And I'm willing to say that publicly, because I feel like it's going to help majority of people. And so I feel really strongly that everyone is deserving of help, and that we should not be concerned with fraud at
Yeah,
this, in this
I think
regard.
from our experience, someone said we found that the application process weeded out the folks who truly.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
If you have
Did- so you
professionals
did not-
reviewing
Right.
everything.
Did not meet the
And-
qualifications,
and-
yes.
In part of the program assistance and the way it worked is some of the applicants, when their applications came in, it was like, where you're at, FYI, you know, if you get this one-time, you know, heating oil assistance grant, then that covers your shortfall for 3 months. Do that, and then you can reevaluate whether you need the rental assistance, right?
Yeah.
So part of partnering with a great organization is that there's casework involved. You know,
I mean, look at the
we
documentation,
now,
right?
Westborough now has a
Yes.
dedicated outreach casework, you know, outreach
Yeah.
worker. And so coordinating with Youth and Family Services as well to connect people to other resources as part of the application process will happen. And it'll benefit.
And they verify the documentation and so forth, right? So I couldn't
Yeah.
just be like, hey, this looks like a good program. I'm gonna put down that I
Right.
have
We-
$200 a monthly income and, you know,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You'd wanna see
Right.
my
Yeah.
bank
There's-
statements
they
or
have
whatever it
to-
might be.
There's so many
Yes,
checks and
yes.
balances
Okay.
that,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, just to keep moving on, because
We
I
need
don't
to
know if
vote.
we're even going to get through everything. Ken, basically, there was a motion made, it's on the page, I don't know if you're on it there, but on the rental assistance program at the bottom, it says, it was moved to allocate $125,000 to fund the rental assistance program in addition to the 17,500 previously allocated for the program administrative services, and basically to do that for 1 year through June 25. And so that motion is on the table, it's been seconded. Any questions you might have
No,
with that?
no.
Okay. So, I will take a vote. All those in favor? Okay, that looks good.
And the second piece,
The
very
second
quick,
piece, yeah.
is to move to authorize the chair or a working group to solicit bids for the rental assistance program administration, and at a subsequent meeting to present a recommendation and a draft contract for review and approval.
Okay. Any discussion?
Second.
Second. Any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, once again, 600. And I would, just while we're on it, I would ask if Kate and Alan, and do you need anybody, and would you like anybody else to work some
That
numbers
should do
or
it. I have-
something? Or anybody interested in,
I would love to
Be-
be involved.
okay.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
All right, yeah.
cool. Yeah.
It's good, we want to get people learning about stuff, even
Exactly,
if
yeah.
it's a, you know,
Something near and dear.
not as a lead.
I have a 10:45 that I need to get home
Yeah,
to.
I know.
Yeah, so,
So, if I leave, we still have quorum that you can?
Yes.
Yes, we will still have a quorum.
Okay. Is there anything that you need from me before I leave?
Well,
'Cause I
all
don't
right,
think
let's
I'm
look
on
at
the
the agenda. We have, and we can skip some of this. I'm going to skip on number 8, which is the High Street, since Hank isn't here.
You don't have Rogers Road on here, because we could update you on that, but we don't have
Yeah,
it on there.
Does it,
It's not on there.
anything of substance?
We're moving forward. We've got, like, good stuff happening.
okay, so we should have a full agenda item for that
Yeah.
next month.
For next month,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
If we
We'll
can
treat
do
that as an issue in correspondence.
Thank you.
Okay.
I,
The housing,
we can talk very quickly about High Street, just because there's some,
well, yeah, I mean, I'm changing, I have the email out to drop 3 Baylor from our insurance and to change it to 45 High so that we have liability coverage.
Right, because we confirmed with Council Perot item last time that we do not need to continue the coverage for the prior property.
Correct.
right. But then with respect to High Street, it's just, continue to work on the due diligence and have an initial meeting with DPW to do the water flow, to request the
Yes.
water flow test and to discuss potential
Okay.
sewer allocation for the project.
Okay, thank
you.
you, Kate. Just know that
Thank you.
Kate is leaving
Yep.
at 10:30.
10:31. So there's no proposed motion or anything, that was just that, so
Okay. yeah,
we've
no,
covered
that's fine.
that.
Yeah.
So,
So moving on, updates housing production.
If I can give a quick update on that, it's actually great news. They're gonna be giving us the draft version early. We should have that by May 20th.
Okay.
And then they're gonna present it to us on May 23rd, so we have a few days to sort of read it. We sort of saw a brief look of it on the screen, on a screen share, and everything. For the data nerds, will be very excited, because
Okay, so will this presentation be like?
that's with the working group that we've had, so like Jenny, myself.
Oh,
and
okay,
the folks
okay.
with them.
All right.
And this will be the draft version, which I can share with folks.
Yeah, I would
But
suggest, yeah, send that around, just so.
I think initially the draft was scheduled for June, so like I said, we are a little ahead of schedule, which is exciting.
Outstanding.
And it all, like I said, it's been great stuff and very collaborative.
Good. Yeah, that actually did come up with the next item, which is Community Preservation Committee, where they were impressed about all the planning that the town has been doing, including
Right.
housing production. So as a segue, Sarah, I attended, but sort of sat in the back. I've asked Sarah to take on the liaison role with the CPC, which is the Community Preservation Committee. And why don't you take it from there? Just, quick as you can.
Right, well, and as I noted, we had an initial training on May 1st, provided by the Community Preservation Coalition. Westborough passed the CPA in 2022, and we've been collecting a 0.5% tax, property tax, starting this year. So this new committee, which is composed of 2 members appointed by the Select Board, and then, of course, representatives of other key committees, including this one, 9 members in total, we together have quite a momentous task in front of us. We have to present our first budget at Fall Town Meeting for 2025. We have to figure out what to do with these funds that have started to be collected this year. We have to come up with a plan. We have to assess community needs, prepare an application in our own guidelines, and then start collecting and assessing program applications to figure out which projects will receive funding. So at least 10% of the funds, of course, have to go to affordable housing. There are also 10% have to go to open space and outdoor recreation, and 10% also have to go to historical preservation. The other 70% is more open-ended. We did confirm, Ed, of course, asked this question, that we cannot set up an automatic process whereby 10% or more of the dollars would automatically flow to this trust. The trust would have to apply like any other entity and demonstrate that we meet the criteria. So it may be that this trust ends up working with the committee and jointly sort of supporting certain projects, or, we'll have to work through what that looks like. But we do have our work cut out for us over the next several months.
Okay, great.
what, 1 South Street?
Questions?
No questions, it sounds great.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It
It
We're
is
on
a
it.
lot of work.
We're on it.
Fortunately,
It's a good team.
I'm impressed with the
Yes.
team. I was
Good
just going to
stuff.
say,
Yes.
I think that, knowing most of those people on the team, really brings, a wealth of knowledge about our town, our needs, et cetera, and people that know, that
Intimately,
hopefully
yes.
will, make a great team that can work together. So
It's a-
Hazel Norris is taking the lead on it. She's on also planning committee.
It's
So-
a bit of committee of committees, so these people are really well-versed in how to get things done
Yeah.
and the various
Yeah.
interests involved.
They're all on some
Yes.
kind of either,
And you're
Housing
holding,
authority,
and you're
open
holding the
space.
clipboard for us, so thank you.
okay, great, all right, moving on, South Street.
Yeah, so, 1 South, we were approached by the owner of 1 South Street about potential residential units on the 2nd, 3rd floor. We offered to talk and so provide some guidance and assistance and explore opportunities there. Their zoning and other issues with that property related to his plans. He's now listing that space as office space, so.
Yeah, I
I don't
saw
think
that
anything's moving forward.
Announcement. So are we dropping it, or?
So there's nothing, there's no act, it's not an active effort for us
Fine,
until
okay.
such time we hear that he's looking back at potentially converting it to housing.
Okay,
the next item on the agenda, why don't we just pass over the financial update?
I-
Because we'll have
right.
better numbers next month anyways.
We'll have better numbers, and also I have reached out, and this is really, both Hank and I both agreed that, we would really like to make sure we have a good statement of financial condition, because one of the things is, we have a significant amount of money that has been allocated, has been sitting in the trust, which is, although it's all put together into, one, if you will, bank account, for lack of a better word. However, it is invested. And so we don't know, I mean, even on that 950, if you just get a 5% T-bill rate on that, for the past year or so, for a year or so, that's going to bring it up to $1 million. So I really want to try to, as best I can, work through the treasurer collector, and finance department to ascertain what our true balances are. And then we can true up what we've encumbered, et cetera, so that we really understand what is our financial position, and then move forward with the budget, which would, really be income and expense statement going forward. So I agree with that, but that's the update on that. Couple of new item opportunities.
Very briefly.
Yeah, 11.
So, a real estate agent contacted me. There's a property on Glen Street. The house is, I don't know if it's officially been condemned, but it's a tear down. It would have to be a tear down. It's been on the market for an extended period of time, so I'm just at the start of doing the research about the property to see if it's something we want to pursue.
Okay.
But it's out there. That could be a single family, or potentially under current zoning, a duplex. Additionally, there is a landowner on Lackey Street with
Right.
property. They're looking to do a 5-home subdivision. Current inclusionary zoning bylaws would require one of those to be SHI affordable.
Right.
And comparable to the other homes. They're concerned that makes the project financially infeasible. They're looking for guidance, assistance. They were wondering if they provided access to trails and other easements, if that could waive the
Yeah, in
affordability
lieu of-
requirement, which does not appear, it's not allowed by zoning, and personally I would recommend against that type of trade-off. The whole point of inclusionary zoning is to constantly
Yeah.
include. So Ed and I were scheduled to meet with
Jenny,
the planning director. She's more aware of the project, and then we were going to meet with the landowner and talk about ways we could help, such as value engineering, and even getting creative where that 5th unit could look like a single-family home and be a duplex, right? Which, two bedrooms in a duplex is a higher SHI revenue for the developer than a single 3-bedroom home, for example, right? So, where we could help with the economics to make the project viable.
Do you know, the zoning kicks in at the 5th unit?
Yeah.
So are they talking about just taking that one out altogether, just doing the 4 to avoid this? That's
We've not heard
obviously a
that part of the
concern.
conversation
Yeah,
at all.
Yeah, hopefully
So-
that's not sort of front and center as a solution.
Yeah,
I don't-
that's why we need to
That-
discuss.
Right.
That's not,
exactly,
I'm not aware that's been part of the conversation
Sure,
or consideration.
But we need an update from Jenny. She was
Yeah, we're gonna-
originally going to meet after this meeting, but she unfortunately is ill today.
So we'll meet with her, get more details, and then we'll have a joint meeting with the property owner, and we'll come back if there's any action for us to take.
Okay. We have one other thing, I don't know if it's worthy of mentioning now, the Connector Road? Or should we hold until we
Yeah,
get a little bit more information on that?
We should, well, you've already mentioned it. So,
Well,
I'd
yeah,
say,
but it's not-
let's do that under issues and correspondence.
Okay,
So,
moving on to issues and correspondence.
So, there's on Connector Road, there's currently an extended stay hotel property that is considering converting to multifamily housing. And in doing so, there's There is an SHI requirement by zoning. So as they're interested, we will be pulled into that conversation, much like we are with the Westborough Shopping Center. So that's just, it's not an agenda item, it's not, we're not even sure it's an
We're still
opportunity
getting,
for us yet, but it's out
We
there.
need to meet with Jenny and talk to really understand
Yeah,
exactly what
what's
are
going on there.
requirements, what's the zoning, what are the, what would be the permitting to.
Right,
to
and what their
convert,
intent is, right?
and
as
what
far
their,
as-
what their intent is.
Um,
But so that's enough for now, but it is of substance. I mean, it's a fairly large number of units, so, which could be great. I mean,
Yes.
Could be great.
you know,
or it
I
could be
think
disastrous
as
to the schools.
travel, as travel has possibly decreased because
Yeah.
of, just cost as well as the ease of remote meeting. I think some of the hotels are hurting. I mean, obviously I think it's extended stay. The state has really more or less taken that over for
Parts of
immigrant
those, yeah.
families,
So,
things like that. So,
so we'll let you know.
we'll let you know. Any other issues?
Issues and correspondence. So earlier, we set up a working group to talk about exploring a bylaw to take advantage of the local option tax credit for affordable apartments. So now would be the time to start that work. So I'm not actually remembering who all's on the committee, but I'll go look at the notes. It was several months ago, and I'll reach out, schedule
Yeah.
an initial time to do that. And we can start the work. We'll obviously need assistance from the assessor's office as we look at the potential and also enforcement components of that. So that's it for me for issues and correspondence.
Okay, any other items? Okay, I appreciate, we're only 10 minutes over, and we did
A lot.
a lot.
going
We
on,
covered a
yes.
lot. We put a lot of things in motion.
Yes.
And I appreciate people's time. I think just in general, the town is pleased with the level of work that we're doing and our, dedication to these projects. So, please know, as one select person said, they thought that we're one of the hardest working committees, but I think there's a lot of other committees, planning and others that, every committee, even the select board at times. will do their thing. All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Adjourn. Second.
Ken, it's your turn.
Oh.
Second
To adjourn.
He's like second to whatever the motion was.
All right, all those in
Get
favor?
out. Thank you.
And thank you, Westboro TV.
Yes, and thank you, Westborough TV.